Starting a company is hard, but here's the thing. Starting is actually the easy part. My guest today is Stephen Pivnik, serial entrepreneur, Ironman athlete, and author of Built to Finish. Stephen discovered something counterintuitive. The more he trained for endurance events, the better entrepreneur he became, and vice versa. In this episode, we talk about pacing and why cash flow works exactly like oxygen in a race. We talk about the data obsession that transformed his business. And we talk about the hardest decision every founder faces: when to push through and when to stop. 3 things you need to accept: solid financials, visible growth, and a moat. Stephen breaks down all 3. If you are building something right now and wondering whether you have what it takes to go the distance, this one is for you. Enjoy the conversation with Stephen and with me, Björn. Stephen, such a pleasure having you.
Björn, thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
You've written the book that I wish to have written. So congrats. I'm a huge fan of Built to Last. I think it's a management business classic. And you've written Built to Finish with a lot of sports background, business context. So really excited to dive a little bit into it. I think before we dive into the content, just give us a very brief background what you did before or on the way, and because I learned you've written much longer on that book than I did.
Yeah, so basically a description of the book is really a pretty good description of what my life has been. Like, I'm a, entrepreneur turned endurance athlete, and I wrote the book in order to chronicle that journey of how I improved from an entrepreneurship perspective, and how I adapted endurance sports as part of my midlife crisis. So I found that, the more I participated in endurance sports, the better entrepreneur I became, and vice versa. So the two have a lot of similarities. And I wrote the book to share my personal journey and to compare the two, and also to offer advice and tips and tricks to others that are looking to achieve big goals.
Super cool. Then let's dive into more details, because you've been an entrepreneur. I work a lot with founders. I've founded companies myself. So it's not just starting things normally, which is the harder part. It's really kind of staying on track, and especially when it comes to endurance, to stay long enough to really build something, figure out something that works. So what would you say is going the distance? So what does it actually mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, to that specific point, I think don't get me wrong, starting is always hard. But once you start, that's the easy part. And most people don't take it much further after starting. And it's very easy to stop and to fail and to get distracted and to go off in a different direction. So I think going the distance is the hard part, and learning to deal with setback, learning to deal with failure, learning to deal with a whole bunch of challenges that get thrown at you almost on a daily basis, whether it's life, whether it's business, whether it's participating in an endurance event. And it's really, figuring out how to have that mindset to keep going and going and going, despite all of these things that are being thrown at you that want you to quit.
What would you say separates the people who kind of actually finish? And this is kind of the fundamental title of the book. So what would you say is what separates people who actually finish from those who don't?
Yeah, it's really wanting the finish really badly, and understanding what you're willing to go through and what you're willing to sacrifice in order to get there. So the finish has to be, super meaningful to you personally. Like, there's a great book by Simon Sinek called on the why, or knowing the why. So I wholeheartedly believe in people needing to understand why they're doing something, what the benefit to them, their family, or their community is going to be. And once you have that kind of as a foundational layer, then it makes a lot of things a lot easier during the journey.
So maybe a provocative statement, because turning this into entrepreneurship, because for me personally, it's much easier to stick to this mantra, I would say, when it comes to sports. When it comes to business and entrepreneurship, I find it extremely difficult when to stop, because of course, we know these stories. I kind of sold my house. I sold basically my entire fortune, and then it turned out to be successful. And now I kind of IPO'd, etc. So we both know that there are cases out there that are not as popular as the kind of success stories, but it's really, I think in business, it's really hard to decide, okay, when to stop. So how very
Yeah, I
intrigued.
mean you bring up a really good point because one of the things that I also believe in is to fail fast, right? You hear this a lot in the business world that if you start on an initiative and it's not working, there's two schools of thought. Dig in deeper, try harder, work longer, throw more money, and it's going to work. And then there's another school of thought saying if it's not working, just stop it already. Stop wasting money, stop wasting your time, stop wasting your passion, go to something else. And I wish if I had a perfect answer for that, I think I can write another bestseller. And there is no best answer, but it's really really important to I think really surround yourself with others that have been in your shoes during a specific initiative, and to get advice from others to realize when the specific opportunity calls for failing fast and moving on versus trying, maybe pivoting a little bit, maybe trying things a little bit differently, and continuing to go after what you started. So I think that the best tool for figuring out which way to go is getting advice from others that have been in similar situations.
Yeah. The other thing I just popped into my mind, I'm very intrigued what you're thinking about. So I'm a kind of I would say a very structured data driven guy. So when I have let's talk about kind of doing a half Ironman with sub 6, and I did. So
That's amazing.
yeah, yeah, it was tough, especially in Switzerland with going up and down.
Yeah.
But anyway, so because it really, like you said, so if we kind of get this formula sorted out, I think it's worth definitely a new book. But so just to be very pragmatic, it would help me, or it helps me to say, okay, let's set this target of sub 6, which is kind of for hobby quite ambitious. And
Yep.
during my training, I get some data point whether this is feasible or not. And the same applies with business. So at least nowadays, when you work in sales and everything which can be put into numbers, you at least have some corridor, some guidance, some guardrails, whether this is possible or not. Kind of thinking out loud further is kind of the risk reward ratio, or the risk success ratio is at least manageable, in not just adding, yeah, if you just keep on going, you will going somewhere, because this is what I did wrong in the past. So looking backwards, I spent too much time on businesses which had no chance to succeed, and I should have stopped earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of metrics and KPIs and measurements and making decisions based on data. And it's interesting, I wasn't always that way. I started off my entrepreneurial career more go by your gut and go by your feeling and go
And
by
yeah,
your intuition type approach. And when I discovered endurance sports, my Garmin became my best friend. I started getting all this data. You know how much data the Garmin collects. And after a couple of months and years, I think years. After a couple of quarters of performing, running, swimming, biking, I started seeing all these charts and graphs, and I realized I have more data on me than I have about my business. Not that we didn't have reports, but it was amateur arrow at work. So I went KPI crazy at work, and I met with every department head. We came up with a set of charts and reports that we were going to utilize on a monthly basis at our newly instituted operational review meeting. And all of a sudden, the business started growing significantly because we were making decisions based on data instead of on the owner's, gut feel. I can talk about this for hours. I'm just a huge, huge fan on data and decisions based on data. Let's sprinkled in with a little bit of gut feeling because as entrepreneurs, we always need a little bit of gut.
yeah,
But
absolutely. You made me smile because last year I upgraded to a new road bike, and now I have a power meter. I have electric shift. I have, of course, pulse. I have all
yeah,
these metrics, and it's kind of crazy. But on the flip side, so the training became so much more effective. And this is
yes.
what I meant. If I have that and that ambition, I would say there is at least a likelihood whether I will make it or not, instead of kind of just hoping, pushing through, doing the hard way, which
Yeah.
I find very fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. It's a wonderful tool, and right now I'm training for my next Ironman, which is about 3.5 weeks away. And I know based on my training data, to your point, I know that I will finish.
Yeah,
So, which in this case, that's my biggest goal because I'm not going for any specific PR. I'm just racing with a friend of mine, and I haven't done one in about a year and a half, 2 years. So I just want to do one. And I know now that after this last weekend of training, I got enough in here to finish one more.
Nice. But you are doing the full one, correct? The full
Yes,
distance.
a full one. It's in
Yeah.
Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
It's Ironman's first event in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, yeah. So last year I finished another marathon with a friend of mine, and then I met another friend, and we were talking about kind of half distance and full distance, and he kind of started laughing with me and said, "Yeah, it's a decent effort to finish kind of a half one, but let's talk again if you do the full one." So the utmost respect for you finishing another one.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy it. So.
No, I will. I plan on having fun. Because I don't have a lot of pressure on specific time for this one, then I know I'm going out there just to enjoy it.
Going back and forth because I really find this fascinating. By the way, it wasn't scripted, so I'm very curious about the listeners. So, not sure how deep you are into the AI game and Claude Code and everything which is going out there. But I started some month ago building up kind of a centralized knowledge graph and putting all the data in one central hub, and now cross checking with marketing, with sales, with product. Are we on track? So, are we all working from different angles on the same focus? And this is
Nice.
another way of how to get more at least chances to succeed in this kind of centralized data driven approach. Some say it's still super spooky. I got really into the game and saying tracking ICP fit, what is progressing, different segments. So it's really kind of bringing the entire how to steer a company on the next level.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to answer your question, I'm far from an AI expert, but I use it more and more on a daily basis, and I think I'm getting smarter and smarter about how to use it properly. It's an incredible tool, and you just mentioned a couple of use cases in terms of feeding in your ICP, putting in your marketing and metrics, and getting advice on how your company is progressing. That's kind of like just the tip of the iceberg on what
Yeah.
any AI, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, or others, can do for you. It's such an incredibly powerful tool that anybody that's not using it is really doing themselves a disservice.
And the other thing I learned, and I think there's a decent handover to your system, basically how to finish things. When it comes to pacing, I think one of the key element is I see it at least in business context, but also in the sports context. What would you say is the pacing element of how to get there where you intend to finish? How significant is it?
It's incredibly significant. I mean, obviously, in the business world, cash is going to dictate your pace. You can't go faster than your cash supply. My advice to a lot of entrepreneurs is to monitor it like you monitor oxygen, during a race. Like if you're huffing and puffing and you're having a hard time taking your next breath, you better slow down. If your cash flow forecast is not showing signs of green, you have to slow down your burn and make adjustments until you can get your cash flow to a manageable level. And the same thing with racing. I mean, when I first started in endurance sports, I made the same rookie mistakes literally for years. I would start to swim too fast and I would get exhausted. Then I would have to slow down. And then when it finally came down to the run, I said, you know what? I need to beat a certain time. I would come out running way too fast. And, 3 miles in, I was exhausted and I still had, 23 miles left to run. It took me several years to finally figure out what my pacing should be on the endurance sports side in order to have a better result. And business wise, again, cash flow. I'm amazed to this day, even more sophisticated businesses don't monitor their cash flow as closely as they should. And when a rough patch hits, then they're having some seriously hard times that can easily be avoided with some better cash flow management.
It's interesting that you mentioned cash flow because when I was preparing this episode, and then I'm working with a lot of early stage founders, and what I see is, especially because normally they're quite young, they're full of energy, full of motivation and power, and I see kind of a different level in kind of overpacing, spending a crazy amount of hours. And I know that in the US there's this kind of new generation of 996 and really putting a lot of effort into the game. And I was thinking, okay, maybe it will last for some years, hopefully, but there is definitely also kind of a facet in energy management, sleep, nutrition,
Oh
which
yeah.
also kind of was on my bucket of pacing.
No, 100%. And I wish I knew as much as I did about, sleep and energy and nutrients and diet when I started that I know now. I had the benefit of being younger earlier. So when you're younger, you can get away with a lot more things. So I started endurance sports young. I mean, you decide whether your audience can decide whether it's young or old. I started endurance sports at 40. My
Okay.
body was capable of doing much more at 40 than it is today at 56. I have to monitor my sleep. I have to monitor my diet. I have to monitor everything else that I put in here in order to get a decent result. And there's just so much data out there that, again, anybody that's not looking at it in order to optimize is doing themselves a disservice. And the smallest adjustments make a huge difference, especially in sleep. I mean, I love this little thing that I wear for to monitor my sleep now
Yeah.
because I don't always wear my Garmin, but this is on 24/7. And the first thing I look at, the first report every single day is my sleep report.
Seriously.
Sleep, seriously, just to see. I mean, and I can tell, like, when I look at the numbers and they're off, I already know even before I look at the numbers that I'm not. It was my sleep wasn't as good. Let's say, and actually, this is accurate. I woke up this morning, I'm not feeling the best. I looked at the report from the ring,
All
and it
right.
told me that, you know what, you did not have a great night's sleep, and it was right.
That's interesting because potentially funny story. When my daughter now turning 6, so when she was born, I decided to become very rigid about sleep, and some young parents will laugh about it, and because that's the worst timing to focus on sleep. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, because I really wanted to understand how strong is the effect, I learned the hard way that alcohol is it's very toxic. So there was a time at some point where I really started like you did. So I looked at my watch and said, "Okay, wow, this was bad." My wife kept laughing at me, so I stopped for a while. Or not that this is kind of my daily routine in the morning, and sometimes I have to confess. I'm totally misleading. So it could happen that I had super kind of deep sleep, super REM, and kind of still not feeling super wow. But I agree with you that the majority you have the sense, oh, this was a very solid sleep. Ein kurzer Hinweis in eigener Sache. Am 11. Juni werde ich persönlich in Berlin sein. Doch nicht einfach so, sondern bei der Go-to-Market-Veranstaltung des Jahres. Julius und Dom vom Artist-Team haben ein neues Format erschaffen. Revenue Royal. 300 handverlesene Gäste, Invite Only. Inklusive sind Hands-on-Workshops, ein Gala-Dinner im Tipi am Kanzleramt und eine Afterparty. Im Vordergrund steht der Austausch mit ausgewählten Führungskräften aus Vertrieb, Marketing und Customer Success. Mit Funky Bond werden wir einen eigenen Tisch haben und du kannst dich bei uns exklusiv für einen Platz bewerben. Alle weiteren Infos und die letzten Tische findest du unter revenue-royal.de. Ich hoffe, wir sehen uns spätestens am 11. Juni in Berlin und persönlich.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, nothing beats waking up in the morning after like a solid, 7 to 8 hours. It's just without alcohol the night before. It's just an incredible feeling versus the opposite, which is with alcohol or not great, and you're just feeling you wake up feeling not the best.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, I'm also kind of I'm turning 46 soon, so I'm still in kind of that generation where alcohol was I would say a very strong part of social life. I was raised with kind of this kind of alcohol needs to be taken, so it got different or it kind of changed over time. But how rigid or not rigid are you becoming or became you became over the years with the use of
Yeah,
alcohol?
that's my new favorite topic to discuss. So I'm glad you brought it up because I mean I was born in the former Soviet Union, so I have Eastern European blood and genes in me,
Oh,
and
okay.
my entire social circle drinks a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to admit how much I used to be able to drink. And when I was younger, it really didn't affect me. And I did it just because of all the reasons that you mentioned. It was mainly for social reasons because everybody else did it and I was contributing, if not leading the pack. There was times where I can go to a party, drink all night, and I literally ran the New York City Marathon the very next morning after drinking all night long without a problem. As I've aged, I can't do the same. 2, 3, drinks at night, and I'm just not feeling the same the entire next day. Just very, very sluggish, can't really focus, and it's having a major impact on me. About exactly 7 weeks ago, in preparation for this next Ironman, I decided to quit cold turkey. I said, you know what? Until the race, I'm just not going to drink at all.
And all right.
The difference has been tremendous. I mean, just waking up, like I said, even on nights where I don't get the best sleep that I can, I still wake up feeling 10 times better than I used to after, several drinks. Right now, I'm standing on the soapbox, yelling as loud as I can. Alcohol is poison, and even in moderation, it's just not good. We'll see how I change my tune, if at all, after I finish this race, and if I get back to it or not. But right now, I'm on this incredible high of being off of alcohol for 7 weeks straight.
All right. Yeah, I did a very similar journey. The next endeavor it's on my list is nutrition. I still have some bad habits, but when I looked into sleep, quite disciplined, workout, quite disciplined. The biggest lever I see personally is kind of nutrition.
No, it's a huge lever, and like what you put in. I mean, the more and more I look into it, and the more I try to stick to specific diets. I also, just like you, feel differently after a night of sleep without alcohol. I know I feel differently after certain meals. Like if I leave the bread out, if I skip dessert, if I minimize the carb intakes, it's just a completely different feeling. Before, it was hard for me to get through a day without napping because I love the
Mm.
nap. And
Hmm.
when I started eating better with specifically a lot less carbs, I felt that, I was less sluggish during the day, and I can get through the majority of the weeks. Maybe I'll nap like once or twice during a 7 day period. Whereas before it was almost, 7 days. I just needed between like 12 and 2 o'clock. I needed that half hour, 45-minute nap to recharge.
Super cool. When just coming back to your book, so if you would write an updated version or a new one, would you cover kind of sleep, nutrition, and some other aspects in more detail, or what would be kind of the angle of writing the
Yeah.
next version of Build to Finish?
That's a great question, because right now I actually have an outline of the next book, and it's 100% business focused on exactly on how to finish, meaning how to get your company to an exit.
All
In my
right.
first book, I talk about, a lot of the steps that I took, but it's not very prescriptive. So the next one is, I'm not going to call it built to exit, but for all intents and purposes, it's going to be a formula to build a company towards exit.
All right.
But now that you bring this up, and I may have to incorporate it, because now that I personally am a lot more educated on, like you said, on nutrition, on alcohol, on fueling, on pacing, and all this jazz. Maybe I will put a little bit of an endurance slant in it as well, to make it a little bit more similar to the first one.
Yeah, because what I learned is I became kind of obsessive about building systems, and when I looked into how to, because for some people I still kind of the sales guy, and I said I never wanted to work isolated in sales. But then, so when you look into kind of the facets of the entire customer journey, yeah, so you think about marketing, you think about post sales customer success, you think about product. So then you're thinking about routines, how to change behavior, how to become sticky. So there are so many things when you kind of open the Pandora's box. It's a fascinating world, but then
It is.
how to make it digestible. So
Mhm.
that's why I was wondering if you're writing a new one in that direction. How big how big would the box become or could become?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much information to share, and just from a personal subject matter expertise, I think I can offer very, very specific advice on the business front on how to get an already mature company, towards an exit. On the endurance front, I would still get. I think I'm 10 times smarter than I was, even 10 years ago, but I'm still an amateur, because there's just so much to know in terms of like micronutrients and specific amounts and calories in, calories out. The more I learn, the more I realize there's more to learn. I can share I would probably share my personal, formulas and systems, but there's a lot smarter people out there than me on those topics.
All right, then let's close that loop, because we started about of what does it take to really go distance and use, and so you're working on the next book and how to exit. So when we just sum it up of some of the key learnings and the transfer from endurance sports to finishing stuff and really building up great businesses. So let's do a top three. So what should be the essence of with all the wisdom you gathered over the last decades?
Sure. So the top three is, first of all, your financials. right? You need to have an incredibly solid system in place in order and corporate governance in order to produce accurate and timely financials at the end of every single month. That's table stakes because anybody you're speaking with is going to be asking for them continuously. And if you don't produce them accurately and on a timely basis, you're going to lose credibility. The second is having growth available in your company. If even though you've had the phenomenal track record of multiple years of growth, you need to show the acquirer that you can continue to grow with their help or as part of their team or as, with their money. Then there needs to be, continued growth. And lastly, there needs to be a certain amount of special sauce, right? There needs to be something unique about your business that's going to be hard for a competitor to reproduce. We call it the moat. So if the moat around your castle is wide and deep, then you're in a great shape. If a competitor can come along and if a Lyft can easily replicate Uber or if a UPS can replicate FedEx, then it's going to, I'm not saying it's going to be impossible, but it may hurt you from a valuation perspective. So those would be my top three.
When it comes to sports, so number one totally correlates, whether it's kind of energy, which is training, etc. So totally get it. When it comes to growth, kind of progress, training, outcomes, totally get it. How would you transfer the last one? Find your
Different.
kind of your cutting edge in sports.
I think the cutting edge needs to be up here. Like I'm pointing to my head for the listeners. You need to have your mental game in place and stronger. Not stronger. I mean, everybody comes to the table at a race with I'm mentally prepared, but you need to make sure that your mind is as strong as all of the muscles that you've trained, because it's gonna the getting through an endurance event is 50% mental. I mean, obviously, being physically in shape is table stakes because you're not going to get to the end unless you're physically there. But when your body starts aching and moaning and creaking and you think you're at the end, once your mind takes over and sends the right messages to the rest of your body, you'd be surprised at how much more you can produce to actually get you to that finish line.
So, because there's no right or wrong, but what popped into my mind, because I recently, I kind of analyzed my style of road biking. And in very simply speaking, you have kind of these sprinters, they kind of, they can push heavy watt, they are super fast for a limited period of time, not kind of the endurance guys. Then you have these kind of crazy people who just go long. So could be kind of an endurance kind of to the max. And then I found, more or less by accident, maybe living in Switzerland for quite a while, I'm pretty good in climbing. And I started some years ago. So I came from running, then kind of triathlon, and then I discovered kind of trail run. Making the transfer to number three. So would for me find your special secret sauce when it comes to kind of your endurance sports. So it could be kind of that you're super great in long distance, or you going crazy when it comes to hot and do kind of desert events, or go hilly or whatever. But find your sweet spot where you have kind of, based on physics or motivation or anything, kind of cutting edge if you would like to be.
No, I like that a lot because endurance doesn't necessarily translate the same in every single discipline, and there's a myriad of different types of endurance events. So figuring out which one is optimal for your specific everything, right? Body type, weight, capability, skill sets, style, form, et cetera, is pretty important. And having done many different events, it's much more enjoyable when you do it well.
Yeah.
Versus, I mean, I've learned the hard. I mean, I can suffer. I can suffer through it because mentally I'm prepared, and I can easily suffer through hard stuff. But the events are so much more enjoyable when you're just performing well.
Steven, it was a pleasure having you. It was so short while. I think we definitely will see each other for your second book. Hopefully, it won't last that long. Otherwise, we'll find another topic to catch up. That was lovely.
Good. Thank you, Björn, for having me. It was a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
And all the best for your next event. So
yes, thank
have
you.
A good
Thank
one.
you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for tuning in. Each week, I have the pleasure of engaging with exceptional founders, industry experts, and investors to discuss the ups and downs of early stage growth. I primarily focus on B2B and Gen AI startups progressing from 1 million to 10 million ARR. We share valuable lessons and best practices for scaling quickly and efficiently. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to give me a feedback on LinkedIn or give it a thumbs up. I can't wait to see you in the next one.